Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another session of Fuente and Merrifield present Meet the Professor. Hello, world. Jose, how you doing? We got Carlito Fuente in the house.
Oh my God! He's on time today. Oh my God! The world can come to an end. The Carlito's on time today. ¿Qué pasa, Papo?
Well, Mr. Cooper is here in the house. So, with all due respect, one of the people that I have a great admiration for, even though that we don't speak much and everything, but I follow him, and we need more William Coopers in the world of cigars. He is such a great person. He's incredible. You know, in life, I've always said it's not how you deliver it, but how it is received or how it's perceived. And William Cooper has that talent, that charm, that elegance, that whatever comes out of through his words are flowering in our hearts. But to me, it's a huge honor today. I was very nervous. I'm actually nervous now.
well, you're gonna be
interview, Papo. You are, Professor, but I'm nervous.
No, but listen, if you're nervous today, imagine you're with him for 3 hours on Thursday. So
really,
get ready. Yeah.
This Thursday or next month?
I like the way really.
This Thursday.
Is that what I'm doing?
But anyway,
let's make sure we put Carlito's alarm clock and make sure he's up for that show.
Well, I'm the one that has to get up early, and you too. I mean, I gotta be. I gotta give Papo some support, at least that maybe one or two people are gonna see the show. So I'll be.
Wait a minute. I don't know if we're live or we're backstage or whatever it is.
No, we're live. We're live.
Me, checkmate. Jaque mate, checkmate. You got the ducks. The duck. I love it.
Anyway,
ladies and gentlemen, this is going too far. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, we'd like to welcome our guest of honor on the plateau today. No other than the prominent, respected Mr. William Cooper. William, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jeremiah. Thank you, everyone. You guys are too kind talking to me about this. You guys are way too kind.
But even though it's William Cooper, but if you go looking for William Cooper, a lot of people will know him. So at the end of the day, it's if you want to send him a subpoena, something, it has to be a Cigar Coop. But anyway, Cooper, it's great to have you here. Like Carlito said, I've known you for many, many years. I remember I was working at Hoya. I think it was 2012 that I met you for the first time. But we'll get into more details later. So it says that you were born in New York.
Yes, I am. Yes, I was. Brooklyn, New York. And lived in Kensington and Bay Ridge areas. And Bay Ridge is famous for where they filmed Saturday Night Fever. So it's kind of like my old stomping grounds there.
But you're not a Yankee fan?
No, I'm a Phillies fan.
Oh, my God. Okay, whatever.
Listen, that's a long story.
That's for another show.
All right, this is fantastic. You got to put shit on this show, William. Go for it.
Coop, let me ask you this. Hey, Carlito, you can send me a pink slip, but you know what I could do? I could fax you my resignation on Monday. So
listen, we get Carlito Fuente, get him into Red Sox Nation. It's something special.
Coop, do you remember the first cigar you ever smoked?
Yes, I do.
What was it?
It was a J&R house cigar, and literally I was not a cigar smoker. I grew up in a family of smokers, but I was working with one of my fellow sales colleagues who wanted to go for a cigar one late afternoon, and I said I had no problem with it because I'm very tolerant of smoke, and he just he said, hey, let me get you something kind of to start off with. It was a JR cigar, and I thought it was I had no idea what I was doing when I was smoking it. Probably still don't have any idea to this day, but back then, I just had no idea doing it. But I do remember that experience. It didn't get me sick or anything. It was something did get me back curious to try it again.
But your first really premium cigar, I mean, that's a premium cigar, but, going up the ladder a bit, what was it?
It was CAO Brasilia. And really, what just attracted me, I was very new. It was probably my second or third cigar that I had at that point. I was just attracted by the Brazilian color of the band. I know it sounds kind of ridiculous, but that kind of got me into that. But surprisingly, to this day, I still will smoke CAO Brasilias. Love that cigar. But yeah, that's what kind of got me into it. It was a little bolder, probably, than someone would start out with, but enjoyed it very much.
Coop, on your show, and we hear it from a lot of people, this might be a tough question. A lot of people say that cigars that for XYZ reason, they canoe, they tunnel, they don't draw, whatever the problem is, a cigar that gets a very bad rating, should it be published or not? The rating.
Ultimately, you have to let media do its job and publish a rating. You have to be fair. If you're going to give a very good rating or a very bad rating, you have to be able to substantiate that claim of why it's going to score good, as well as why it's going to score bad. I mean, and I think sometimes the good piece gets a little overlooked. Like, I'll see a very high score out there, and I can't justify how that review was good enough at a high score. Same thing, if you're gonna kill a cigar in a review, you got to kind of substantiate it in the review. But certainly you have to, you can't ever, you got to get the reviewer. That's what the reviewer is there for, to do its job. Do it in a fair way, do it in a professional way, but substantiate what you're gonna do with that.
But I can imagine that after somebody thinks the cigar is a 95 and all of a sudden it's an 82 and 83. I know, because you and I have talked, and we don't have to mention names. How does it feel when somebody calls you and says, "Coop, you don't know the shit what you're doing. How could this be?" How do you feel?
I don't take it personally. It's part of the territory. That if you're gonna give the score a lower score, you got to be prepared to kind of take the criticism back. It's the same with the top 25 at the end of the year. Again, you got to just, and really what it comes down to, there's not much more I'm going to say than what was in my review, because the review kind of has it. Now, I may go through the process in terms of, if that question's on the process, I'm willing to answer that. How does it make me feel? I don't like it, right? But I'm not going to, I have to accept that that's part of what I'm doing.
Yeah, no, I know that you've had shows with 4 or 5 different bloggers too, and everybody has a different opinion. There's people that say, well, it should be what it is. Other people say that anything that's really a really low score should not be published because that hurts the industry, hurts that manufacturer. But that's something that, it's kind of tough. There's people that they'll just post whatever it is. If it's a 30, it's a 30. If it's a 40, it's a 40. It's a 50, a 50. I personally, it's kind of tough. I think some cigars, when you really give them that very low score, it does more harm. I'm talking about 60s and 70s. If you get 80, 85, even if you think your cigars is a 95, you get a 83, 84, you got to live with it.
I disagree, Professor.
Okay, let's hear what you have to say.
No, you know what? You and I have not disagreed in many programs, and I'm
resigning.
Well,
finally, we're gonna have some fun for everybody out there. Go ahead, Carlito.
Here we go.
I think the reviewer should call it the way he sees it, and anybody can make a horrible cigar, unsmokable cigar. You could be the best cigar maker in the world, and it could happen. And if that happened to be with the reviewer, and when he went to several cigars or whatever it was, because they smoke more than one cigar, if it is what it is, it's what it is. And if it's not what the public and the consumers believe in, then it will fall short on the reviewer. It will lose credibility on the reviewer. But I think the reviewer has to be honest. He's got to be totally himself and everything. That's how he's going to build his credibility. And I totally support. Listen, we've had nice reviews that I appreciate, and we've had horrible reviews. And I have never called a reviewer in my life, in my lifetime, and said you were wrong, because everybody has their own judgment, their own opinion, and I respect that. And that's one of the beauties of cigars, and that's one of the beauties of tasting, and one of the beauties of judgments. It doesn't mean they made a mistake. Maybe we made a shitty cigar and it got out, and it just happened to fall in the hands of the wrong person at that moment to judge. But that's my opinion, Professor.
Okay, but I'll put it to you this way, and let's be honest about it. I've said always, whatever the review is give it to it. Now, do you think when people see a cigar from a company that's a good company and all of a sudden gets a 60, do you think that helps the industry or hurts the industry or hurts the manufacturer? Carlito.
No, I think
It's better not to publish it. It's better not to publish a 60.
Well, the 50 is pretty strong. It's like, it this quote. But I make some big cigars like this big. That battery, it has a disclaimer: batteries are not included. So if you use it for the wrong purpose, then we should not be judged.
Yeah. All right. I want to hear Melanie's point of view on this. Melanie, what do you have to say?
Can I say it? Opinions are like assholes. Everybody has one.
All right. Coop, what's your 2 cents advice on this?
So the scenarios that Jose are talking about, where you like the 60s, right? I would say they're the exceptions, right? They're not a lot of those types of cigars you get in. But what's happened over the years, right, is we've seen this curve go towards higher scoring. A lot of us media guys are seeing it, where suddenly 90 is not the standard of excellence. It's almost considered a consolation prize. So we're seeing a lot of the scores get skewed into the mid to upper 90s, which me and a lot of folks think isn't really right. So we've been trying to kind of get at it where, at least I've approached it where if you're getting a 90, that's a standard of excellence on your cigar. Anything above that, that's exceptional, right? And what's happened is a lot of these scores at 87, 88, 89, they're looked upon as bad scores now, which 15, 20 years ago, that wasn't the case. Exactly. So that's a lot. And so a lot of times I'll say, someone comes to me with 87, that's not really a terrible score. It's not as high as a 90 yet, but that's not a terrible score by any means. It's just that things have changed right now in the industry. Is what's happening. These scores have gotten a lot higher.
No, I agree, Mr. Cooper. I definitely agree. I see in every review, so many in the 90s and everything. It seems to be the norm. It doesn't. I don't think getting a cigar in the 90s today is going to really bring a big attraction to a consumer. Considering myself a consumer, it seems to be the norm nowadays. And I really believe that critics should be a little bit more critical of the cigar. I am very critical of my cigars. You know what? There's very few that I smoke that I make myself that I say, oh shit, this one belongs in the 90s or high 90s. I'm always looking for that perfection, everything. And as a cigar maker or a chef, that perfection to us never exists. We're always looking for that perfect moment. And I, for one, support you. I hear what you're saying, and I think that what you're doing is an incredible work. And it's not just because you're the guest of honor in our show. I really believe in what and you really should be critical and be honest and sincere. And of course, our cigars are not going to be always in the 90s. I don't expect them to be, because everything is question of a moment and of opinion. But it all goes back, which to defend ourselves and defend Jose and defend all the great manufacturers, is over longevity, sustainability, what sells and does not sell, what survives. And there's a reason that it does. And the most difficult thing to accomplish for any cigar maker in this world is consistency. And it's moments. That's what makes cigars so interesting. That today, that cigar that you probably thought was 87, next year you go smoking and it might be a 92. And for different reasons, for vintages, for crops, for moments, for humidity, so many things could affect a cigar. But I compliment you, and I don't want you to be encouraged to do anything differently than you've done other than to be honest and be a true journalist. We need true journalists in our industry. That's the only way we're going to survive. The only way your industry, your world, your segment of our cigar world will survive.
Well, thank you, Carlito. There's an interesting kind of dynamic that I see coming out of, like, for example, a lot of factories, right? So there's a lot of factories where they have their own brands that they bring to market, and then there's a lot of contract brands, right? And the contract brands sometimes are smaller brands. And I'm seeing stuff come out of the same factory, and for some reason, the contract brands stuff, which is smaller companies, are getting scored much higher than the actual brands owned by the company. And I just kind of question myself, like, why that's going on, because in reality, a lot of times, the factory's trying to do the best work for everybody, no matter what. But I think sometimes there's this notion of, look, I'm all about supporting the small guy, don't get me wrong, but the small guys, they sometimes build some relationships up. They build relationships with the media. And I'm seeing the scores sometimes higher than they should be. And the stuff that I would say is owned by the factory. And if you look at, and I've done a lot of analysis on this to look at that, to see that. And all I can think of is it's a relationship thing. And sometimes people, when there's relationships, that there is a bias with a reviewer. There's a question about it. And we have to try to put that bias aside. So that's a point I really wanted to make, what I see observing with scoring over the last few years.
Very good point.
We question ourselves, how can so-and-so company that's making 7-8 million cigars a year, then this guy, he's making 400,000 cigars for them a year, and they're in the 92s, 93s, and on the top cigars. It's something that's, we'll questions ourselves, and I think you have a point there. Coop, you have been doing this now, I think it's 10 years, right?
About that, yeah, about that. Yeah.
So you've interviewed a lot of people, and who has been the most difficult person for that you've done an interview that it was really tough? I mean, if you want to take the fifth on that one, it's no problem.
No, I'll say it. And it's not meant to be. It was tough, but it wasn't a bad interview, right? He was tough, and it was George Perdon. I've interviewed him twice. George is very candid with his answers, and if he's not happy with the way questions being asked, he will let you know, and he'll let the interviewer know that. And that happened in both interviews I've done with him. Not to say, hey, we were afterwards. I did both those interviews in person with him. We both shook hands afterwards, and we talked afterwards. There was no hard feelings. But if George didn't like a certain question, or if he felt the question really wasn't in good spirit, let you know that. Very honest with that, and I appreciate that. But it does challenge you in an interview like that, especially with someone with the credentials like a George Perdon. So that's the one I would say is definitely the toughest one I've had.
Yeah. And of all the interviews you've done, the easiest?
Oh, the easiest. The easiest one I think I did was when I interviewed Charlie Tarano, like a few years after he sold. Because Charlie just basically said you can ask anything, and he told the whole story of what happened with the sale of the company. And it made my job really easy, because here we are, we're tuned in to Charlie, and Charlie's just kind of going, and he's telling the story, and people are like, we're getting great comments back from him on that. So that was, I think, the easiest interview I had. It was also one of the most satisfying ones I had, because a lot of people hadn't heard that story before. Just like when I had Jeremiah on. Jeremiah was a little more challenging because I was learning more about Jeremiah's story. Charlie's story I knew already about. And so I would say Charlie was definitely the easiest one I had.
Let me ask you also, you've been smoking for a while, and you're very, I would say, one of the most hardest working people in media, and you have a regular job, because some people are in the media and they don't have a job. Their job is, media. You've worked for big companies and still
Jose, you got to phrase this properly, because this really doesn't sound very good.
No. Don't worry.
Let's start again.
No, come on, Jeremiah, cut it off. Jeremiah, you and Carlito have issues. You guys, I mean, we're going to talk after the show, but both of you have issues. I don't know
So
what is
let me rephrase that. But first of all, I'd like, on behalf of Jose, to apologize to all the journalists out there. You actually have real jobs. He wasn't implying any of that.
Well, listen, there's a lot of bloggers that have their regular job. Then there's some bloggers that their job is being bloggers. But that's very clear. But my question to you, and I don't know why I'm with these two knuckleheads, Carlito and Jeremiah. Cool. In your opinion, this show is, I think I might send my resignation on Monday. In your opinion, why do so many companies fail?
Why? I think, why do so many cigar companies fail?
Yeah.
Well, I don't think it's anything special that, when it comes to small business, because there's a high number of small businesses that fail. Ultimately, I think it comes down to money. I think money is going to be the issue. It's not cheap to get in the cigar business. It's not cheap to maintain your cigar business. My perception of things is, yes, you can go to a factory and get a cigar to sell and bring to market. You can get a blend to bring to market. The bringing to market piece, and a lot of times, is harder. People don't realize that distribution is a much more difficult job than maybe getting that blend. And they don't realize some of the costs associated with that, whether they try to be a one-man sales show or hire sales teams, hire brokers. I think that and they have to market their cigars and spend money for marketing it. The money starts to add up, and I think sooner or later people realize this is much harder than they expected to be. And ultimately, I think cigar companies will end up failing because of that.
Okay, but do you take in consideration the marketing, the strategies they come up, the ideas they come up? I mean, I don't want to criticize anybody, but we've seen a lot of small guys that started very small and they're huge now. But we've seen people that started off pretty well and they disappeared. Do you think a lot has to do with the handling of social media, the sales team, how they communicate, if they're accessible?
Yeah, I think all those factor into that, certainly. I don't know necessarily. I think with a small company, the social media piece is very important because it's a way of building a direct conduit to your retailers and to your customers. I think that a lot of times companies, when they start going into different territories, some of them get intimidated when a bigger retailer wants exclusivity. And I've sometimes seen that backfire with a lot of companies. They give someone the exclusivity and they don't realize they can't grow their market at that point. So yeah, I think a lot of those things you mentioned factor into that.
Coop, we have seen, I would say, in the last 4 or 5 years, a huge decline in people that had their websites. There were bloggers that have just totally disappeared. I think at a time there was about 100-something guys out there doing stuff. It's come down to really a very small group of guys, all with great shows, very credible all. What do you think was the main factor for some of these, I would say 50 or 60, we could say, that have totally disappeared? Did they lose credibility? Was the things they did wrong? Was it the way they rated cigars? What's your opinion on that?
What I've tended to see happen is the websites that have survived and have been successful, for the most part, are the websites that put the time and the work in. And they have a passion about media as much as they have a passion about cigars. Because once you start doing this, and I'm sure the four of you know this, right? It's work. Okay, it's a lot of work to put a show together. It's a lot of work to put content up on a website, photography, research, writing reviews. And a lot of the sites suddenly see that workload and I can tell you, I've spoken to guys who failed. This is much more work than I expected. It's not really worth my time. So you see a lot of people fall off because of that. And if you're not passionate about the media piece, And I can tell you the news piece is harder than the reviews piece, because you really got it. Because that's we hit more stone walls with the news piece than the reviews piece. You know, if you don't have that, you're not going to make it. And I think what we've seen that happen is some people maybe going to be into it. They realize they can start a Facebook group a lot easier than running a website or a media brand. So that's I think the difference there. You're mute, Jose.
All right, Jose, unmute yourself.
Yes. Today, I'm not going to mention other websites, but we all know who the guys that are out there that report the news, that hustle. Some hustle more than others. But for those that are listening to the show, that are passionate about cigars, can you just give a little bit of a rundown how you started? And it's a two-part question. And what would you advise? It could be a young person, it could be a 60-year-old person, maybe a 70-year-old person, maybe after this, I'll start a blog. So could you run down starting and the advice you would give to future generations to do a great job like you've done?
Yeah, you know, I started with this. I went to the IPCPR in 2010. I was doing business development for a retailer. So I was kind of helping him really kind of get his humidor in order. And really what came out of that is I kind of went into that IPCPR and I was like, boy, I had that Disneyland effect on me walking in there. I've always kind of been a writer and a media advocate by nature. You know, I married an English major, for example. And so I had an interest in that. So I started writing about the experiences of that. And it was just meant to be a short-term kind of journal thing, but it kind of turned into more because people started reading it and they were paying attention to it. And then, you know, I kind of realized at that point, maybe there's more to this and I could start reviewing cigars. As I started reviewing cigars, I learned it was very hard to get the information on the cigars. So that's when you had to start reaching out to media companies, and that's kind of how the news piece evolved. You know, because I saw it was hard for some companies to get information from, and it was others that the information that was out there was just plain wrong. So, you know, I kind of started, you know, working that angle, and that's kind of how I started with this, and then it just kind of grew. Where I always had the vision of eventually adding a podcast to what I was doing. That was never in question. It was just a matter of time, because I think there's certain things that when people hear your voice, it's different than when you put it in print. I think having a combination of those two things. I've seen a lot of the newspapers in cities where a lot of the sports guys become sports talk show hosts, and yeah, I kind of looked at that, and that was kind of what I was always envisioning with that. For the new guy, okay, there's a few things that I would recommend. Number one is obviously you got to like cigars, but you have to have an interest. Like I said, goes back in the media piece. Have an interest in that. Decide what you're going to do to be a differentiator than someone else. Don't try to, if you try to duplicate someone else in cigars, eventually it's not going to help you stand apart. So try to find what your differentiator is going to be, and, you know, stick to that, stick to a plan with that, because that will help. There are some, you know, like, you know, for example, Bear, who's my partner, he's got a podcast of his own, right? And I call his podcast the human side of the cigar industry, right? He found a niche with that was different than the podcast he was doing with us. And that was some good advice. And the other advice I gave him was really stick with this. Like you got to make a long-term commitment to this. You don't want to be a podcast and fall off the cliff. And he's got 3 years now on this right now, and that kind of he stuck to that plan. So I think those are the things I would look for. Do what you're comfortable with too. If you're more comfortable writing, write. If you're more comfortable in front of a camera, do the camera piece. And that's kind of what I would say too. If you're comfortable doing both, do both as well. Take all those things into consideration. Be yourself, and I think you can be successful at this and be very happy.
Yes, that's without a doubt is good advice. Coop, you travel a lot, not only in the States, but international. So what is something you're traveling, you go, whatever state it is, and all of a sudden you look up and say, I want to visit this shop. What are a couple of things? Let's look at the positive and the negative. What are negative things that you see in the shop, the way the shop is handled, that would not make you come back? And what are the things that you see that are positive that when you get back to Charlotte, you would say to any one of your friends, if you're visiting XYZ state, you got to see this shop?
Yeah, in a shop, there's different types of shops. You have anything from, very small smoking room areas to outdoor patios to elaborate luxury smoking rooms. And that doesn't really matter to me as much as when I go into the store, I want to make sure that there is a knowledgeable tobacconist behind there. I'm not necessarily looking for special. I don't even tell people what I do. Like unless they recognize me, I don't want special treatment. But I want people in there to kind of give me knowledge, tell me about their humidor, what they have. I look for very carefully how the humidor is laid out too. I mean, that's a big part of it, right? Because if I want to recommend the shop to someone, right, I want to make sure that the things are very cleanly laid out. The smoking lounge has to be clean. It doesn't have to be fancy, but it has to be clean. If I see ashtrays that haven't been emptied for 2 days, that red flag right away with me. Or if I see food wrappers or things like that, that's another red flag there. But if I kind of look at those things, combination of a knowledgeable tobacconist with a relatively clean room, and kind of open to everybody. Not, if I see a lounge that is kind of exclusatory, that's a little bit of a red flag as well. Where I'm not necessarily looking for everyone to be warm and do kumbaya, but you always want someone to feel welcome in that cigar lounge, and if they want to kind of, if you're having an open conversation, they should be able to engage in that conversation. They should be able to have a free thought there. So I look for those. It's nothing rocket science, but those are the things I look at and I come back with, and that's when I'll say, yeah, go to this store. I recommend it. It's not the fancy store, but great store to go to and have a good experience.
Coop, have you ever walked into a shop and all of a sudden you've never been there? There's could be any age of a person, and you ask him for a recommendation, all of a sudden he says, I don't smoke cigars. Would you go back into that shop?
Here's the deal. Okay. So you may say no, right? I was one of those guys who used to go to cigar shops early on and wasn't smoking. I was going to sales, but I wasn't smoking a lot, right? But at the same point, if it's someone who is like on the staff there, yeah, absolutely. If it's someone working on the staff, that's another story. If it's a patron, I wouldn't mind. But if the staff, you better have someone who smokes cigars there, is what I'll say. I remember when my son started working retail for a while, he had to struggle with that because he was newer to cigars when he started working. He learned it and he started doing it. But I remember that was a little tougher for him at first because he didn't want to tell customers, hey, I just started smoking recently. But then he kind of got into it. So I would say in general, I want a knowledgeable staff there who's got experience and can tell me what point me to stuff.
Coop, you and I have talked a lot when it comes to CRA. And I know you from day one, you have always been very supportive of CRA. And you have had Glenn Loop on your show. Let me put it to you this way. With all the efforts and all the money that the CRA has spent and all they have accomplished, in your opinion, why do so many people not join the institution, which I've said for many years, CRA, in my personal opinion, is the last line of defense for the rights of people to smoke cigars? Because you've dealt with a lot of this, I would like to hear your opinion as a journalist.
I think CRA, the work they've done, in the last 12 years, starting an organization from the ground up is not an easy job. It's a hard job. And honestly, Glenn Loop, 12 years on that job, a long time. He did a very, very good job there. I still think there are areas where CRA maybe needed to be a little more transparent with some people, what they're doing on social media. That's kind of Monday morning quarterbacking, right? But I don't think that made a difference there. I really think if I look at where things failed, or not failed, but where things could have been better, is I think the retail community, for whatever reason, didn't become that ambassador arm that I think CRA had hoped for originally. Not criticizing the retailers, but I think a lot of consumers follow the lead of their retailer. And if you can't get the retailer connected into CRA, and there's some retailers that are great retailers and great representatives of CRA, and there's others who have no clue. I think that piece could have been better. Because ambassadors are one thing, but then I think the retailers also need to wear some sort of an ambassador hat, because so many of their customers follow the recommendations of what to smoke. If they're giving the same message to their customers, hey, $35, join this. This money is important. It's going for these types of lobbying efforts. Oh yeah, you're getting 2 free great cigars with that. I think that might have made a difference there. So that's kind of like where I'm and it's not a criticism of the retailers. That may have been something CRA just needed to do better as an organization.
You know, Coop, I'm going to agree with you on part of that, but I have to also say I don't want any retailer to get. But there was a lot of retailers that didn't do the job. I remember, and everybody knows, I used to travel 38, 40 weeks out of the year.
Right.
All my events, the first thing I would ask how many people are here, members of the CRA. You know what, the first thing that really pissed me off, what is CRA? And I would look at the retailer, and I blame the retailer a lot on that. Because at the end of the day, what they don't realize, and they still have time to realize this, and we're going to talk about the rulings of the FDA a little bit later, is that it's their livelihood. The first people that should have supported CRA 100% was every retailer, because CRA was fighting for the survival of the industry and for the survival of the cigar stores. And a lot of people would say to me, probably you heard the same thing, I don't have time. I don't want to get into politics. I don't think it's going to work. I mean, what do you mean it's going to work? You know how many things they have overturned with taxes and smoking bans and the fight with the FDA? And I know Carlito's going to talk about that later, but I'm going to blame a certain percentage of people. And if you look at the associations in every state, it's only, you can have 100 members and the work is going to be done by 5 or 6 people, and that's it. And the rest don't really care.
Professor, I agree with you. But
Thank you.
Partially.
Oh my God.
I'm glad Carlito agrees, because I don't agree with you.
But I also agree with Cigar Coop, and I agree with William Cooper. I think that we can't cry over spilled milk, but the CRA should have been much more transparent. I think that you going back and looking at, it was a new organization. It was put together by people with passion, not professional people, professional lobbyists or so forth, but by cigar makers who had a passion that wanted to survive and to protect the brick and mortar, protect the family businesses. I think today we have, moving forward, not looking back at our mistakes, but not making the same mistakes again.
Yeah.
I think moving forward, today with social media, we could do teams, we could do virtual meetings with all the retailers and have them, like we did the town hall, have them one-on-one to understand and be totally transparent, so they understand that their livelihood is at risk, that the industry is at risk. I think that we can make a much stronger case, and we'll get much more support moving forward. And hopefully, we will get the support of the rest of the cigar makers and the rest of the industry. Because also, in defense of the brick and mortar retailers, they heard the need to support CRA, the small mom and pop cigar family manufacturers. But they also heard from the big boys that they will be wasting their money and wasting their time to support the CRA, because it would be impossible for CRA to achieve any of the goals that they were fighting for. So they were also discouraged by very powerful people. So realistically, that is the truth. And I heard that from so many of my friends who I called up who have incredible stores. who told me day after day, but so-and-so, sales manager, the head guy of this company, that guy, says you guys are spinning your wheels. So let's be honest with each other. That is the past. And William Cooper's absolutely right. We made a lot of mistakes, but moving forward, we have an opportunity to correct them. And this is our last chance to all unite and to defend our most beloved and beautiful industry as one.
Thanks, Carlito. I think the important point to make, though, is, look, there were results this year, which was an important year. And those results were in part for, CRA had a lot to do with those results. I'm not going to say they had everything to do with other organizations, there were other people, but you can't. I heard Glenn Loop say this early on. You just couldn't flip a light switch and change this stuff overnight. And at first, I said, why can't you, right? And as I started learning and following this, I understood it is a lot more difficult. I had to learn a lot about legislation and judicial process throughout this whole thing, right? And suddenly I realized this is a lot harder than you think. Like overturning something sometimes harder than passing it into law.
Absolutely.
So, and then these laws get lumped into other pieces of legislation that you have no control of, right?
That's correct.
So I learned a lot along the way, and I kind of, I'm a little more understanding. Yes, mistakes were made, but you know what? Like you said, I think there were results, and I think if you're learning from those mistakes, it's so important to get behind the organization right now.
Truth. Coop, we were very happy when we had the ruling from the judge. It gave a breather to a lot of companies. It's gonna really help a lot of them stay alive and keep on working. I've said it on 4 or 5 shows I've been on. It's a battle that we have won, but still the war goes on. I think that we have to forget about some egos. Some people get off their horses. And like Carlito has said many, many times, and Jorge Padron, and Lito was on the show, and other people, we have to unite. What's your take, or what would be the advice that you would give to so many people out there that have, I would say, the small companies, the medium-sized companies, the big companies, is another different thing.
Like you said, the battle was won, the war is not won. And, legislate, on the judicial side, let's say appeals could still happen, right? So we always got to be careful with that. And the appeal could change something. A different judge could change something. On top of that, you're looking at some of these court cases where, the FDA, technically the FDA can come back and redefine substantial equivalence. And what if the Biden administration that's now in power says, you know what, you guys got to pursue that, right? And then they come up with something new that will be allowed in front of a judge. These are things that we have to kind of keep our eye on the ball with right now. There's still taxes out there. And I think taxes is going to be a big issue in 2021 right now. Because with all the things going on in the US and the world, they're going to need money. And every time you need to get money, what's the easiest tax to put in? It's a tobacco tax, right? And you're going to start seeing a lot of these. And you're going to see a lot of these local and state battles start to happen next year. And these are things that, like I said, they could have a big detrimental effect on business. A lot of small business right now with some of these taxes. And I'm worried about what we're going to see with that. We could be seeing some states try for age 25 smoking as well. That's something that could start to hit the industry. So I think there's a lot of things we have to be really cognizant of over the next couple of years right now. We're still regulated by the FDA. We don't have an exemption. So I think it's important that we keep fighting for a full exemption so that's into law. And there's nothing that they can do to kind of take that exemption away by putting it into another piece of legislation there. So it's very important we stay on top of this. We are not out of the woods. We are still very much in the crosshairs. There's a lot of anti-tobacco groups out there right now. Mail orders in danger. Some of that mail order legislation could be in danger if the Congress goes a certain way. There's a lot we have to look in 2021. It's not over by any means.
Coop, you're doing amazing.
Oh, sure. I don't know about that.
Are you sure you're a journalist or a movie star? Because usually when we pull the journalists in to interview them and they're sitting on the other side of the table, they start getting nervous. But you're rock and rolling today.
I got the goosebumps here. You won't. I can't lie. I'm nervous.
You're doing
I don't
amazing.
know, am I answering of any value here? Yeah, I appreciate it.
No, this is a wonderful show. You ready to get into the hotspot?
Absolutely.
Ladies and gentlemen, Melanie, this is Melanie's hotspot.
Buddy. Hi, Coop. How are you?
Hey, Melanie.
So I do have an excellent question for you.
Absolutely.
I was wondering, Coop, what is the sexiest thing that you have ever done?
Okay, hold on a second. I gotta make sure I read the disclaimer here. So we are broadcasting out of Basel, Switzerland. So anything you say is fine.
What is the sexiest? What is the sexiest thing I ever done?
Is that color
Whoa.
on your face?
That is color on my face. But I'm trying to think of something that I actually did.
Aw,
I mean, I haven't really, you know, I have a wonderful wife, but I haven't like turned the lights down or put the roses on for her or anything like that. I probably should have, right? You know, I think it might have been when I just surprised my wife for her 40th birthday, and I planned the whole weekend in Cape May, and had even a party down there for her, and brought a lot of her friends and family down to that party. Not that I had said, again, not the guy with the romantic music of the roses or anything, but I think that kind of was like a turn on to her, right? Because she kind of like, wow, you actually did this, right? And you actually planned this whole thing out. And, so not the greatest answer you're looking to hear, but I think it might be that. We'll tell you that.
that's great. Well, I also was kind of curious about, you know, you obviously do a lot of lives, and things, I guess, happen. So do you have like the most embarrassing moment while you're live on them doing an interview or anything?
The most embarrassing moment that I had doing the interview, I mean, yeah, I've had one where I've had like something on my face, something like that, and I didn't notice it, for sure. I never got caught a hot mic. So that's a good thing, right? That's always something you worry about. I mean, I lost the show once, which was embarrassing. Like I had on Max Fernandez from Agonarsa Leaf, and we lost the show completely, which was horrible, right? We lost the recording. We don't know what happened to the recording to this day. It changed my whole project, but it was embarrassing that I had to go and tell someone who took their time at night, personal time, to do an interview, that we lost your show. And it changed how I actually process things to this day. Like now we have triple backups go. So we ensure that doesn't happen again. But it's embarrassing when something like that happens. I've never had that on-camera embarrassment thing though. So I've been kind of lucky with that.
So what is your favorite hot take? I like this word hot take. I've not really known that one. So is that when somebody else, like a guest, gets on and makes a?
Oh no, it's a hot mic. It's a hot mic. Hot mic in radio is when the mic is on and the person behind the mic doesn't know it. So they say something really stupid, right? Because they don't realize the mic's on, right? So I can tell you that there's been people I know that have basically told their passwords like on the air, right? And didn't know the mic was on. I haven't done anything like that, or said something really bad about a person, not realizing the mic is on. That's something you just gotta be absolutely buttoned down with, that doesn't happen. So that could be very embarrassing.
Yep, I agree. Well, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know if that was a fun answer you're looking for, but I'm a boring guy. So.
Well, I pulled out that question.
And Melanie, we're gonna get.
Hey, whatever it is, Melanie, you stole the show because I can't see the difference between Coop's face and his shirt.
He definitely got it.
Like the green screen, it disappeared.
I love it.
But Melanie, we're gonna get our revenge because we're gonna put you in the hot spot soon.
Oh Lordy. Okay.
All right. Back to you, Professor.
Robert Ducky, you're the one.
Uh-oh. This is where the show goes up north.
No.
It's so
Coop,
much fun.
you have been going to, I don't know if you ever went to the RTDA, but I know IPCPR now, PCA. There was a time, and I remember I was on the advisory committee, and Dave Garofalo and I would say we were the two guys at that time that tried to get to the board to understand, with bloggers, journalists, whatever, some people call you. And I have to personally say that there's 7 or 8 of you guys that do a tremendous job going booth by booth, interviewing the principals or the owners or the head honcho there. And I think now that the organization understands that what you guys, in the beginning, a lot of people thought you were like bothering, taking time away from people. I think they have realized, and a lot of manufacturers realize, how important it is for thousands and thousands of consumers all over the States, and not only in the States, all over the world, that want to see what's new or what Carlito has to say, or Jorge, or Pepin, or whoever it is. So I think that what you guys have done is an amazing job covering the shows. So that idea of doing that, how did you get into it? What did you see into that, covering the show?
I started going to the show in 2010, and really I started coverage model probably in 2012, to the level of coverage given it. And one thing that I learned really up front is that it wasn't that companies weren't receptive to you coming into their booth. This was a very new thing for them. Video, live coverage, interviews, having an exclusive article on an online site. And they simply, it wasn't that they didn't want you there. They didn't understand it, right? And you had to be patient with that. That was the thing. I had to be patient with that and not take it personally or anything like that. And what I've discovered is we just kept at it. I just kept at it over the years. And suddenly, more doors were open to companies that you may have never thought doors were going to be open to. And it was just like keep trying, right? And just being nice about it. And some of these companies have come back and told me straight out, we didn't understand what you guys were all about at the beginning. It was a world we weren't comfortable with. But as things have evolved, we understand now, and we want to embrace what you guys are doing and be a part of it right now. So it's gotten easier. It's a lot easier over the years, but it took a while to do that. The notion there was the story, Jose. It was a group of bloggers that went in with the trick or treat bags. It was a small group. We're still paying the price for that 10 years later with a lot of people. Is this because it created such a bad vibe at the trade show, and it's taken a long time to undo that. Just from a small group that went in there. And basically, I don't know what the expectations were when those guys went at the time they went, but it whatever it is, it did damage, and we paid the price for that for many years. So that make things easier is on top of that.
Yeah, it was true, and we don't have to get into names, but I remember people asking me, because remember when I was with La Aurora, we were the first guys practically to bring people down there. And then in 2012 and 13 and 14, when everybody wanted to blog, and without mentioning names again, there were bloggers actually going to the booth and say, well, if you don't give us this, and that, we're going to give you a bad review. And some companies even got a little bit intimidated, not intimidated, but they were saying, what's this new wave of 60, 70, 80 people going around, like you said, trick-or-treating? And it was a horrible situation. But thank God now the 5, 6, 7, 8 news outlets that are covering the show have done a fantastic job. You have supported the CRA, the legislation. You've gotten out everybody who wants to know what's happening at the show. So, I mean, my congratulations on the job that your team and other news outlets have done. It has been amazing.
No, thank you, Jose. You know, another thing I think was a little different about what I did was I actually don't want your show samples to review, is what I'll tell people. I actually don't want to review a show from the trade show. I've moved very much away from reviewing stuff that's not in production, namely on a retail shelf, because in the end, that's what people were buying. So I want to review the stuff that people were buying, have a kind of apples to apples comparison. And we've known the stuff in the desert. The stories are out there that you know, the cigars aren't, you know, they're subject to certain conditions. Maybe they're not the blend that's kind of completely finalized. Maybe the packaging isn't kind of finalized, which is very important because people want to look at your cigar. You want to make sure the packaging's apples to apples, so when they search for it, they can see it. So that made it a lot easier for me. Like, hey, we're not going to review stuff on the show. We'd love to smoke them to have the ability to see, touch, smell, taste what you have. But you don't have to give it to us because we're not going to review it. If you want to send it to us afterwards, that's great. If you want us to pick it, great too. But you know, and that made it a little easier. And a lot of guys since then have adopted that model. I'm not gonna say I was the first one to do that, but you know, a lot of guys are doing that now today, where they just aren't reviewing the show samples.
Yeah, show. I have to agree with that. You know, everybody wants to come out and, you know, exhibit what they have, and sometimes the cigars are not ready, and then you smoke it at the show. One thing, 6 months later, you smoke it, and the cigar absolutely has changed. How do you see PCA for this year? If you were to give some advice to the PCA, don't put the hat now of a journalist. Put the hat on if you want to, as a store owner. What would you, as a store owner, would like to see from PCA for next year? For this coming year?
You know, I think ultimately that store owners want to see value. They want to see that, you know, they're going to a trade show and they're getting some value out of that trade show. And for many reasons, the retailers haven't felt that. I don't know if it's, again, I think it comes down to PCA. I think like everyone else, a new world to them. You know, today, everything's out in the open on social media. It wasn't like that 15 or 20 years ago. So now everything you say is suddenly scrutinized by guys like me, unfortunately. But I think ultimately they have to get something where it's maybe more of a gala or an event. It's been talked about a lot, where to a level of like one of the festivals. That's where I think it needs to be almost. And I think, you know, but that costs money. So do you raise the rates? Do you raise prices of PCA to do that? I don't know. That's a tough one to do. But I just think they can't do business as usual going into next year, and they have to figure something out. You know, certainly projects like Carlito and George Padron's cigar are going to create excitement. That's a great step in the direction. Like, wow, this is something. I know I'm reinvigorated about going to trade show just from that release alone, but I'm sure other people can come up with some creative ideas as well to make the trade show an event. You know, do a formal launch at the trade show. You know, I know Placencia did that a few years ago. They knocked it out of the park when they launched the way they launched their brand at the trade show, and I'd like to see more of that with the releases, more unveilings, more of kind of just the event where, as opposed to, hey, I'm coming in to give that order. And I think it will help. I think it's a step in the right. It's not going to be a silver bullet, but I think it will help reinvigorate some interest in the trade show next year.
Coop?
Yes.
Because we can only get Melanie on once, we have to go for second best now. Rich?
Okay.
Yeah. Third best. Third best at best.
Good to hear, Rick.
Hi, Coop. You mentioned your son a bit earlier. I used to refer to him as Robusto Cooper, and other people called him Mini Coop. How's he doing?
He's doing good. He's doing very well right now. He's not working in retail anymore, but he's got another job closer to his field. And you would have, they actually, I think, Mini Coop badges printed. I think a piece of trade show 1 year. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, today's story involves a wonderful teacher that I know was teaching her 5th grade class, and she noticed that Jeremiah was not paying any attention. So she stopped the class and said, "Okay, Jeremiah, there are 3 ducks sitting on a fence, and you shoot one. How many are left?" Jeremiah looks at her and says, "None." She says, "What do you mean none?" He says, "Once you shoot the first one, the other 2 are going to fly off." She says, "Well, that's not true. 2 should be left, but I like how you're thinking." And then Jeremiah says, "I'm going to ask you a question." She says, "Go ahead." You see 3 women walking out of an ice cream parlor. One is licking her ice cream cone, one is sucking her ice cream cone, and the third is biting her ice cream cone. Which one is married? And the teacher responds, "The one sucking the ice cream." He says, "No, the one with the wedding ring, but I like the way you're thinking."
Wow. I think that was one of your best.
That was good, Rich.
Okay, guys.
Rich, you blew it out of the ballpark.
That was good,
Thank you,
Rich.
guys.
That was
Oh my
good.
God.
One thing about the PCA, if there was a way to really control the fact that show specials were not offered before or after the show, that they were offered only at the show of people attending the show. I've known Coop since before he got in the business, seeing him around some cigar shops when he was just a smoker. And I'm sure he would agree that a lot of stores don't want to spend the money to go to Vegas and spend all that and find out that the guy 3 blocks away is getting the same deals and didn't spend a penny to go. PCA has some work to do.
Yeah, they do. And another thing I hear from the stores is sometimes they want to be at the trade show, but they can't buy for 3.5 days. Some stores are just not in a position to spend money for 3.5 days. And that's a little bit of a challenge that they have to deal with too. Because again, you deal with certain stores that just only have limited budget to do this. And if they're going around a trade show floor, you're kind of expected to do business. And so that's what I'm saying. I think they need to figure out a little more. Maybe they beef up a little of the seminars, the education, and make the content compelling for them to kind of stick around for the last 2 days.
That's definitely. Coop, you went to the TPE last year, did you?
Yeah.
So your thoughts on TPE?
This may upset a few people. I thought I like what TPE is doing. I think they've provided some opportunities for some folks to exhibit at a lower cost, a little of a turnkey approach. They can certainly cater to a different audience because you get some of the more convenience store pieces in. I didn't like the fact that I looked at one side of the hall, which was the non-tobacco stuff, and I looked at the tobacco stuff. And to me, I didn't like the fact that the non-tobacco stuff had all these elaborate booths and we didn't in the cigar side. It just bothered me to some extent. Call it, maybe that's where, I lied, that's where my loyalty and love lies. I didn't really like seeing that. And I know that it's expensive to put these booths up, but again, it wasn't something that sat well with me coming out of that show. I would have liked to have seen, and they did the best to make this look nice. So I'm not saying it didn't, but it just, to me, it almost seemed like we had this have and have not, and almost created a bit of with that. And that was a little of a disturbing feeling I had. Just call it selfish, but that's just me.
Coop, you've taken a very journalistic approach in your work, or at least what I've seen of it. And that means that you care. If you care so much, which you do, what would you like to leave behind?
Yeah, I do care. And what I'd like to, I'd like to kind of leave behind that just because you have the word media in your name doesn't mean you're a bad guy. To me, there's this notion that we have in the US today that media are bad guys. The media is bad. The media is biased. And I'd like to kind of say there's an approach where things could be honestly taken. I am not necessarily first with a story all the time, but I want to make sure the story is vetted and it's out there and it's factual. If it means I don't have a scorecard with the most first stories, then I'm okay with that. But I'd like to see this notion of media as the enemy dispelled. And I even see, unfortunately, I even see it in cigar media too. And it's unfortunate. So I'd like to kind of see that cleaned up. And if I can leave my mark on that, saying I kind of did it and people recognized I did it, and if I haven't done it, I certainly want to know about that too. But if I can kind of leave my mark on it, that would be the way I would do it.
Well, you're certainly on the right track, that's for sure. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. William Coop, aka Cigar Coop. William, thank you very, very much. You were a real pleasure to have on the show, a real gentleman, and a real friend. Thank you very much, William.
Thank you for the opportunity very much. I really appreciate it.
Yes, this
Cool.
was awesome. Thank you.
Coop, it's we talk a couple of times a week, and sometimes in the day, sometimes 3 times. It was a pleasure to have you here. We were all happy when the idea came up. Carlito's gotten to know you, and Cynthia Fuente, that I know it's hearing, is one of your biggest fans. I've always been a fan, but now Cynthia and Carlito and Jeremiah are really big fans because you're honest. You're not a moocher. You report the news with facts. You go to the source, recheck like true journalists. Check it 2 or 3 times to be that the news is accurate, and you write it very, very, very professional. I am very proud to call you a dear and good friend. We've known each other for many years, and we'll still be around for many, many more years. So to me, it's been a pleasure having you here. And that advice that you gave to anybody that likes cigars, and I think the only thing that you left out is that you also have to travel, because you've been in Nicaragua, you've been in Cuba, you've been in Dominican, so you've seen with your eyes everything that goes on. So I think that's the only thing that we have to add.
I didn't. Yeah. I agree with that, Jose. Thank you. Yeah. I appreciate the opportunity. And like I said, I'm going to meet a lot of new friends. If there's a lemonade at a Lemons with the COVID, I've met a lot of new friends. Rich, and I've known you and Rich for a while, but I've gotten to know everyone else here more and more over the past few months. And it's been a great opportunity to have that. And I think it's the start of a beautiful thing going forward, certainly.
Yeah, Mr. Cooper. Yeah, Mr. Cooper.
Thank you very much.
Will, as Cynthia would say, or Liana, because you're their heroes, and I hear about you all the time from them. I have to say thank you, and to me, it's a huge honor to share this platform with you. I'm just a humble cigar maker. You're someone who is really into my life in a big way. And you're absolutely right when you talked about going to the show the way blogs were. Years ago, it's very difficult to teach a dinosaur to walk with swag, but we have our own beat, own rhythm that we've been walking for 100 years.
Sure.
But you're here to stay, and I welcome you. And I think that the blogs and what you're doing is the best thing that's happened to our world, bringing people together from all over the world, people that would be impossible to meet, to build these friendships, to build these bonds, to really connect the dots what cigars are really about, to share the love, to share the knowledge and the experiences. This is, the COVID has been so difficult, but it's also been one of the best things that's happened to the cigar industry in the last year, because like yourself and many others, we come to become friends with so many beautiful people around the world that at a trade show it's impossible to see. It's almost impossible other than a quick hug, kissing the cheek, good to see you, goodbye, because there's just so many people. But through these special moments, we're building a friendship for life. And for that, I'm forever grateful. Thank you, sir. I appreciate your work, your professionalism, and you're a friend for life.
Thank you, Carlito. Like I said, it's an honor to hear those words out of you and everyone that's working on this team. Thank you so much. It means a lot to us, and we'll just have to keep making sure we do things the right way here.
All right, before we go, William, there's dozens of people writing on the comment section. People are sending their love, their appreciation to you. They wanted to congratulate you for such a beautiful show. I'm getting WhatsApp messages through the roof.
Wow.
Of which one from Cynthia Fuente saying, please send my love to William and my best. I think the world of him. He is simply great. William, you're very much loved. And
He was great. Thank you.
very
Thank
much.
you.
It was a huge
Yeah.
honor having you on the show today.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay. Well, I hope you had a good show, everybody. And until next Sunday, same place, same time, take care of yourselves and of others. And remember, if you don't do it with passion, don't do it at all. Bye-bye for now. Bye, everyone.
Jeremiah.
Bye-bye.
Who's on next?
Jose, who's on next?
Well, I was going to announce that we have a special guest, a very important guest, a person that has been in the industry, has been the president of the IPCPR, has been the president also of the CAA, a leader in our industry, Mr. Craig Cass, is going to be with us next week. And also, Carlito, on Thursday, Coop will be in touch with you. I'm going to have to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, Jeremiah, 3 o'clock in the morning to be listening to you. You will be on Cigar Coop next Thursday. So we'll get all the details to you, and everybody have a wonderful night.
All right, bye-bye for now. William, be well,
Thank
my
you.
friend.
Thank
Take
you.
care, Coop.
See you on the road, Coop.
All right. Take care.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.